start asking questions to you. One that came in, and I'm not sure which of you is best to answer this, so please just chime in as is appropriate. But can you elaborate on the direct connection between human sex trafficking and the seemingly harmless pornography that many of us men patronize every day? And Pastor Troy, I do think that was part of your presentation, so I don't know if maybe you want to start speaking to that and then let the other panelists chime in as well.
Okay, you want me to start with that?
Yeah.
I have a slideshow. Can you put that up?
Yes, sure I can.
We have a wonderful partner,
If you want to share the camera as well, then we'll be able to see your face.
Okay.
There we go.
If you could start that slideshow.
Sure.
It's Pastor Aaron Hansel. He is a wonderful collaborative partner. He's the co-producer of the documentary, but he also is the founder of the Demand Project. And the Demand Project targets men regarding pornography. And one of the reasons we have recognized this, and we have statistics that are huge indicators, is just recently in our city, we asked the U.S. Attorney in Nevada, the FBI, Homeland Security, and others that have partnered with our local sheriff department on a sting operation for 6 months. And they made about 200 arrests. They recovered 500,000 pornographic images of children, talking about minors. About 2,739 videos, children, talking about minors. This was just in a 6-month period. So one of the things communities can do is ask their local law enforcement, what are they seeing in recent times? Again, that was a 6-month window recently in our community. And so it brought a very sobering perspective to all that are involved. You see here Pastor Aaron's slide that he provided to us. Porn is a big problem. It's destroying lives, and it's, we believe, fueling human trafficking. If we can change the demand, this is his mantra. If we can change the demand, then we can change what's happening to the victim. But the key is to reduce the demand by healing men. Most men are the ones that are the buyers of these young boys and young girls. And so he has created this free 30-day program. It has action steps, and it helps men get through the issue of pornography. And it's delivered. What they did is they attempted to do this locally, like in churches, and no one would show up. Everybody's too ashamed or embarrassed, or are definitely not going to admit. But when they did it online, they had hundreds and then thousands of people lining up to be part of the demand. So we truly believe it is a proactive approach, and that without stopping the demand, the supply will just continue. And the more everyone understands demand and supply, the more violent, the more aggressive the recruiting processes will be. And someone mentioned earlier about the diverse groups that men choose. In our local community, the majority of minors, mainly female, that are being recruited into the sex industry are from our local community.
Thank you so much for sharing that, and I think that's a very important point. You know, if there was not demand for these slaves, then they would not be in existence. And we're running up right against our time, but we do still have questions coming in. So what I want to do is just share a couple of comments that have come in, and then I'm going to ask Pastor Troy to close us in a brief blessing, so that if you do need to leave us at this time, you can do so feeling complete. But those of us who are able are going to stay on and keep answering questions. So one really clever note that came in from one of our attendees, and she's also one of the board members at URI North America, was take the sticky notes, place them on the inside of the bathroom stalls. These are one places where women are alone and safe. So that was really clever. Take them with you, keep them in your purse, and just put them in the stalls when you're in bathrooms and public places. Another note coming from Maria Crespo, who is also a URI employee in Argentina, and she says in Argentina, trafficking is related to drug circulation and government corruption. And she's wanting us to have a conversation about that, if that's the case in other countries. So I'm giving you a little teaser, some incentive to stay on after Pastor Troy closes us. So we'll get to those questions in a Thank you so much, Pastor Troy. So if you need to leave us at this time, please do. If you can stay on for some more questions, we're going to get this conversation going. So let's go to the question that came out of Argentina. Have we seen this? Is this a case and in the communities that you work in, is there a connection between drug or government corruption and trafficking?
I can.
Please.
I think I can speak to that a little bit. Just recently put on a program for 3 states for the Lutheran Convention, Lutheran Women's Group, and one of the speakers was the Assistant Attorney General, and he was the prosecutor of a lot of traffickers in this area, and so he focused his talk on how human trafficking is rising in this area, particularly because gangs are transferring from drug trafficking to human trafficking. And he actually got down to the practical details of, you know, how much it costs to buy drugs and then sell them, as opposed to, you know, getting a girl, and if she's rescued, it's easy to get another girl, and drugs are sold one time and then they're gone, whereas a girl can be sold over and over. And so he gave all these statistics of how the gangs in this area, which are out of El Salvador and MS-16, and I forgot the names of all of them, but yeah, unfortunately, there is less capital involved, and it's actually easier, and there's less risk to do human trafficking as opposed to drug trafficking.
Thank you for speaking to that. And I want to ask Bob and Fran, if I think they're still on the line. Do you have any experience on this that you wanted to share as well?
Well, yes. We've had a lot of experience. We live in Thailand, in northern Thailand, for several months each year, and have for many years. And we spend most of our time doing anti-trafficking work. I can tell you firsthand that when we go up to the hill tribes in northern Thailand, up in the Burmese, near the Burmese border, it is rife with drug traffickers and human traffickers. So we definitely see a connection. We have to, when we go up there, we take a bodyguard with us. It can be scary. But we also see drug traffickers shifting the focus onto human trafficking because it's more lucrative. So yeah, we see that a lot, and I'm sure it goes on in Africa and the Himalayas and India for sure.
Thank you, Bob, for speaking to that. And I know here in California, what I've heard is that, unfortunately, the penalties for human trafficking are actually less than the penalties for drug trafficking. And so traffickers, it's less risky for them to traffic human beings than it is for drugs. And so like you're saying, they're switching industries, which is kind of makes you sick to your stomach. Elisa, I believe she wanted to chime in on the question about pornography and the demand. Elisa, why don't you speak to that?
Okay. One of the things I wanted to briefly point out is that although there are people who willingly partake in the pornography industry, you have to keep in mind every single time that someone chooses to look at porn, that those faces that are smiling at you, that look like they're enjoying what they're doing, the majority of them are actually forced or tricked into doing that. When you look at it from that perspective, it may not seem as enjoyable maybe as you initially may have thought. But with all the clients, all of the victims that I've worked with who are now survivors, that's one of the things that, they'd like for me to point out is that even, who were in the porn industry, that even though it looks like something is, it's agreeable to them and they look like they're having fun and they're smiling and everything in those pornographic pictures and things, a lot of them are underage and a lot of them may not look like it, but they are, and they mostly were forced. Some of them were tricked, being so young as they are, especially with our American citizen kids. But just keep that in mind. Do you really want to support something that is contributing to such a crime? Because the chances are really high that that image you're seeing is someone who's enslaved.
Thank you.
I'm going to have to join us from the telephone because my computer is about to walk away.
Okay, thank you, Elisa. We'll wait for you to rejoin on the telephone. I want to move too, because a big part of what we want this webinar to be is not only to hit us in the gut and make us feel like this is terrible. We want to leave feeling empowered, feeling like there is something we can do. So we have a comment here from Alma Goodwin, who says she's in the beginning stages of working with a faith-based entity on incorporating human trafficking into their programs. And she said that a lot of good information and resources were shared today. I want to circle back to each of the panelists because I know each of you were struggling to stay within your 7 minutes. If you could tell a community, I was going to say one, maybe I'll give you two. Like, what would be your top 2 things, really practical steps for empowerment? If someone's on this call and they're saying, I want to start something in my community, how should they get started? And we'll start with you, Gail, because Elisa's going to join us on the phone, and we'll just work our way around.
Well, call me. I'd love to talk with you. And if they're able to get the small group study series, it's available at cost for $8. Then they can go through that in short order and have a basic understanding of the issue, and then from there, share with larger groups. Beatrice also has fantastic resources on her website. So I think the first step is educate oneself, but don't get hung up by thinking that you have to be some kind of expert, because I'm certainly not, but I've been able to share a lot with a lot of people.
Thanks, Gail. Pastor Troy?
Did you say you want Alyssa to go next because she had to leave?
Oh, sure. Elisa, you want to go ahead?
Sure. In addition to educating yourself, make sure you share that information. Volunteer. Trafficking victims are everywhere, so they could be amongst the human service agencies, they could be in the court systems, they could be at soup kitchens or food kitchens and things. They're really everywhere, so you want to volunteer to the causes that are helping victims, definitely, but really anywhere that you are, you're going to find that there are victims. So volunteering is really, really important. And also, something that you could do is share a smile. I didn't get a chance to share a survivor story. I'm going to give it to Sari so she can post it afterwards. But you never know the power of a smile that you might share with someone, that it could impact their life and make them feel human for even a moment. And when you do read the story, you'll understand that better. And also, whether you pray, meditate, send positive energy, definitely keep the victims in mind, the people who are helping those victims. I don't have the safest job in the world, so I'm definitely looking for that positive energy to stay safe. And also make sure that you pray for those traffickers and the people who are buying and selling so that they can stop this crime and see people as human beings.
Thank you, Elisa. Pastor Troy, you'll go next.
Thank you. You definitely, in my opinion, you need to start with law enforcement. You gotta speak to someone in law enforcement that's going to give you a clear perspective of what's really going on in your community, and they have statistics. If I said that right, and there's a lot of misconceptions, but the numbers don't lie. And you can take those numbers, see how they apply to your community, and then that would be number one. And you may not get that on the first try. You might have to reach out to several different law enforcement partners in different areas, whether it's vice or community relations or children's against crimes against children, but figure that out in your own community and get that done. Secondly, you have to build some sort of coalition. And like you heard earlier, don't expect the experts to be the only ones you reach out to, because those experts are already busy. They've been in whatever field, and sometimes they have a silo or a box, and we really need to, this is much bigger than any one group can handle or take on. So yes, include the experts, but do not underestimate the passionate grandparent. Don't underestimate the concerned citizen, and start with a very small coalition and just begin to build. And it'll organically, and like someone said, pray, and it'll organically begin to develop. And like you heard earlier, there's plenty of good models, templates, and other things that are offered. Take those and see how they may overlap or apply in your own.
Thank you, Pastor Troy. And I think you started as a concerned grandparent, if I've read your story correctly. So yes, never underestimate that power. Beatrice, would you like to go next?
Yes, thanks. I would of course start by going to Exodus. You can start there with we have a one-page everything you want to know about sex trafficking, which you can use to educate yourself and also share with anybody that you can talk. The more people you talk about this with, the greater the public awareness and the more action we'll see. I think it's also important to speak to the children in your own community. I think prevention is something that we need to focus on as well, and educating youth about it. And I think that a person, especially a young person, may not recognize that he or she is being trafficked, but her friends might. And so I think it's really important to be looking out for the kids in the community, to educate them, to talk to them, and don't assume it doesn't happen here. So educate yourself, everybody you know, but talk to your kids.
Thank you. Thank you, Beatrice. Bob, do you have anything that you'd like to add? Oh, you were muted, so you want to start again from the beginning of your sentence?
Yes, I am more into international trafficking. Of course, I have an interest in North America as well. But I am for each of us trying to affect the supply line of companies that we invest in and buy from. Mm-hmm. I would suggest that one little thing people could do is buy fair trade products as opposed to non-fair trade products. That would be maybe coffee or chocolate or sugar. And this way, it's a wake-up call to businesses that use child labor or even adult labor slaves in the supply line. So that's one suggestion. I also think it's a good idea to think about making a monetary donation to those nonprofit organizations in your community and around the world who are actively in the field countering the trafficking that's going on.
Thank you, Bob. And I'll just add my little easy tip. In the packet you're going to get, I've enumerated several resources to know the signs, so that when you're walking up and down the street and you see something that you think it doesn't feel right. Gail's talked about this. Our law enforcement don't have the time really right now to be doing proactive investigations. And so what they're operating off of are tips. And so calling that human trafficking hotline is so important. And I'm going to put up the red flags that Elisa shared with us on your screen just for a moment so that we can see those again. And these are going to be in your packet, like I said. But share these with everyone you know. I, yesterday in putting this packet together, found resources for healthcare professionals, for teachers, for hospitality workers. My sister and my aunt are in the healthcare profession. So I sent them a training video on how to screen people that come into their office for these. There's also sources for lawyers. So I don't know how many healthcare workers we have on this call or how many lawyers, but I sure know that each of you probably knows someone who does those jobs. So please do share these resources and encourage the people in your community to screen their patients, screen their clients for these kinds of things. And remember that calling that trafficking hotline is the very best way to get this information. I've posted a poll on your screen that you can participate in that says, knowing these red flags, do you think you've ever encountered someone who's been a victim of trafficking? And I for sure think that I have. And the poll answers, only about 29% of you have voted, but no one has clicked no, which I think is just, wow. That means that probably each of us at some point have crossed paths with someone. And so what is the power of that if we would take the action to call the trafficking hotline, or to ask someone, are you okay? Do you need help? Or to give them the number disguised as something else. One of the healthcare professionals was saying she writes it down as an x-ray place. You know, she writes down the number that says, call this x-ray place. And it's really the human trafficking hotline number. So there are powerful things you can do no matter who you are. And so I just wanted to share that. That's my little spiel. I want to share a question, and I'm not sure anyone will have the answer, but I do want to share it. Someone asked, does anyone have information on whether there is any work being done in northern Iraq with the sex slaves who have escaped from ISIS? Do any of you have that international perspective or knowledge of that issue?
I can tell you that we've received reports that young virgin girls are offered as a recruitment tool for adding soldiers to the ISIS army. It's very hard to get a lot of information out of countries like that, but that I believe is true. It's from a very good source, and another sad story.
Yeah, thank you, Bob. And the woman who asked that was Mona Malik, and she works with closely on that issue. So the two of you may want to connect after the call, or if anyone else is interested in that issue, when you get her information after the call, connect with her if you would like. I am getting a question. Lisa, are you still on the line?
Yes, can you hear me?
Okay, yes, I can hear you. We had a question come in asking about materials in Spanish, Creole, or French. I have a feeling you might be someone who could speak to this, but anyone else is welcome to answer as well. Do you have resources for materials and languages other than English?
You know, one of the biggest frustrations and challenges that I have in working with the international victims, which for me sometimes are not from Spanish-speaking countries or cultures, but speak Spanish, because they are trafficked into Spanish-speaking countries, and then after so many years develop the language and then end up in America. So I speak Spanish with them, even though they might be from Thailand or Russia or something like that. There are really limited resources that are in Spanish. That's one of the reasons why I brought up volunteerism as well. I voluntarily have taken time and helped different organizations to translate some of their materials into Spanish. A lot of times I'm on the go, so I'm doing this on the road, you know, just trying to translate materials, not just in Spanish because I speak Spanish, but in other languages if possible, to get those materials to people. So unfortunately, part of the challenge still is that we do not have enough materials that are in other languages. Spanish happens to be one of them that I utilize the most. So I could try to put together some of the resources that I'm aware of that, you know, or websites that do have information in Spanish. There's only a few. So, you know, if people are looking for something to do and they speak other languages, volunteer for the organizations that are helping victims so that they can get a head start and a jump on translating these materials into all languages, because we need things to be translated so that we can reach more people.
I'd like to add to that too, if I can. Going back to partnering the coalition, locally here, the Southern Nevada Health District helped professionally translate all of our material for the handbook into Spanish, because it was important for them, because they would see a bunch of girls lined up, the pimp would be sitting in the car, they take them to get contraceptives or another location to have abortions so they can continue using them. So having partners like that, for your website, you can just add Google Translate or another app that's similar, and someone going on can just click whatever language. And so there's some very simple ways with the modern technology. But having those partners that can do some of the material that's off the website, they did it for us for free, because it was not only part of their mission, but the law in our state says everything that they provide has to be done in Spanish and English.
Fantastic. And as well, the National Human Trafficking Hotline has services in over 200 languages. And so while that's not printed material, even if someone doesn't speak English, they can still call that hotline number and get service. So that is something important. Thank you for that. And Beatrice has also sent me a little note saying she knows of a brochure that's available in Spanish, Creole, and other languages. So we'll put a link to that in your resource packet as well. Are there any other questions from our audience? I'm out of ones that have come in. If you would, given that our number it's gotten a bit smaller too, if you would like to ask your question verbally rather than speaking, just click the raise your hand button and I can open your microphone as well. So we'll give you a minute or two to do that, to put in any more last minute questions that you might have. All right, Mona has raised her hand, so I'm going to open the mic for her. Mona, are you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Hi.
Hi. I did write the question, but it might have not transferred to you already, so I'll just ask it. But this webinar was very informative regarding detecting trafficking and what to do as far as response goes. And will there be a follow-up on this webinar on information on how to help the victim and heal the victims psychologically, how to come back into the community without shame?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is beyond my scope, but I think that Elisa who works directly with victims, could probably speak to that, but anyone else as well who has experience in that, please chime in.
I will say that transitioning from a victim to a survivor is something that's going to vary from person to person as far as time frame and what that looks like, as well as if they're international victims who are learning a new language, a new culture, who may not even know that they're in America, someone who needs to know basic life skills even here in America. They don't know. I've had clients who have never seen a flushing toilet, which we take for granted, and they are just mesmerized by flushing it over and over again, as well as people who don't know how to take care of their own finances, who are used to making more money. I've had kids say, well, I pull $1,000 in a night. How much do you make, Elisa? Well, I don't make that, but I'm far more rewarded in what it is that I do. So, there's a lot of work that goes into helping a person during their healing process and transitioning. I think that coalition building and knowing who the players are who are in our local communities when we come in contact with a human trafficking victim is very important. Working with law enforcement and educating our community so that we're not re-victimizing victims, and so that also we have a flow to, from the first meeting and that first step forward into from a life of servitude to a life of freedom. It's very important to have partnerships. So, everyone has a role to play. You don't have to be the police. You don't have to be a legislator. we all are, playing our roles in this bigger picture, and it's just important to come together as an international community and, work together so that we can have the services and resources in place for people who are needing our help. And sometimes that's not even on from a professional perspective. That's even just, people who are friends with people and are seeing that they're in trouble and, can help them connect to resources, but are also their supports. Faith communities are so instrumental in this. And so I think the partnerships are really important to have, and knowing who the players are so that we can really give that best service to people and give them a shot at, reestablishing their lives.
Thank you, Elisa. Beatrice, I think you had something you wanted to add as well. Oh, I think you're on mute, so hold on.
Okay, I'm off mute. So survivors usually present with a very complex set of problems that almost always include post-traumatic stress disorder. Victims of trafficking present at the same rate and the same intensity as those who have soldiers who have seen active combat. They may also have drug addiction. They have often usually traumatic bonding with their traffickers, health issues from lack of health care, from malnutrition. They usually have wrecked finances. They're homeless. They, if you've been trafficked, the typical age of entry into the life is 12 to 14 years old, which means that many survivors have, a sixth grade education. So their education is behind, and their job prospects are few. They've had no modeling for a regular life. I mean, the nature of the illnesses, they're complex, they're severe, and it requires a comprehensive plan of many types of professionals. Volunteers can come in, can be helpful in providing mentoring, job skills training, and other financial training, and some of the things that Elisa just mentioned. But it requires very specialized training on the part of the volunteer or provider, and lots of patience, because typical of the of having been in the life, and also with the traumatic bonding, is that they'll go back. They'll go back many times, and they'll be confrontational perhaps. And so it's important to understand, if you do get involved, it's going to be trying, but really important. And it's a great way to volunteer, but it's not something you can easily jump into by yourself.
Thank you.
I'd like to add to that too. We got to make sure that we understand that the serving the victims that have come out of that lifestyle is almost an entirely different category than bringing the awareness, the prevention, and building the coalitions itself. And a major part of that is having, I would call it, a menu of different service providers that can, take in the victims immediately and begin that work. And some victims will not go into a faith-based type of recovery program. Some will. Some prefer that. Some don't want to go into an in-house program at all. They want to be reunited with their family, and then we have to refer them out to outpatient services. So there is no one answer. But having all those partners, like was mentioned earlier, is critical, because you can rescue someone, but if you have nowhere for them to go, and even we've had discussions with police officers said, when it comes to minor, some of the safest place they said was juvenile hall. And that was a truth at one point, and now we're growing beyond that. But I would not recommend that someone try to take that task on individually, or especially if that's not their specific calling and training.
I want to concur with Beatrice and Reverend Troy. That's excellent advice. Just one more point, that if you find out where the treatment service centers are nearest to you, and then just see if they need mentors, or if usually there's like a training, that's one way to go. But the Administration for Children and Families, on their website, they're tasked with the rescue and restore victims, so they have a list of coalitions all over the country, so that might be helpful.
Great. I'll add that to our resource packet if you want to send me the link before we leave. Maybe we could get a closing word, since we're at 11:30 now, and that's what you all committed to staying towards. A closing word from each of you, and then Gail, can I put you on the spot and have you go last and just kind of close us out? Okay, sounds good. Bob, do you want to say a closing word, and we'll just work our way around the screen?
Well, I just want to express my appreciation to URI for helping to raise awareness. This is a serious global issue. It's serious in small towns in America and biggies as well. So thanks, and thanks to you personally, Sari, to put this together as professionally as you have.
Pastor Troy, you're next.
Well, again, it takes a team. We have a chaplaincy program here in our city. Chaplain Barry Minardi has taken on a role to help keep things going when it gets overwhelming. Kristen Alexander happens to be my daughter. She also helps run things, and so people really have to make sure that they're getting great people to surround them, or they will not be able to keep up with all the good work. And again, that partnership, and I want to thank you guys for putting this webinar on, because there were so many people in our city who were looking forward to it, and we wanted to hear from the rest of those that are around the country, and thank all of you for the good hard work you do, and you're literally someone's answer to prayer. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor Troy. Goosebumps. Thank you. I want to say thank you to everyone who has come, who's worked with me, and through my barrage of texts and emails over the past several weeks, for your graciousness to be here, but also the time that each of these panelists put in to prep for this. Probably you don't know, sitting here attending, but we had many dry runs and rehearsals and sound checks, and they really did put their heart and soul into this. Sorry, I also want to thank URI North America for having this as part of their program, for the Leadership Council, who is a volunteer board that really takes on a lot of the heavy lifting for different programs that URI North America does, and specifically my subcommittee that helped me work on this, which was Danya Wellman and Sukhvinder Vinning and Monica Willard. So thank them, as they were the kind of invisible bubble surrounding me and all of you. And then just all my thanks aside, a note on just, again, keep an eye on your email. This session is being recorded, so you'll be able to share it or watch it again if you missed a certain part. All the resources will be available to be shared, except for the contact sheet. I do ask that you keep that private, as that has contact information that was okay to be shared in this setting, but not with a broader whole. So that's the only thing that I'll be sending out that really is confidential. Everything else, please pass it around, please share it, and use it in your communities, and report back to us. If you do an event in your community, or you're inspired to do something by this webinar, nothing would make me happier than you letting me know that. And also talk to each other. URI is a network, and we believe that we're all better together when we share best practices. So use that contact information that we're sending. Get in touch with me if you're looking for someone else who might be trying to do this work on an interfaith basis. And consider joining URI if you work with an interfaith group that's not already a part of us, or if you work with a group that maybe doesn't fit our description of a cooperation circle. We have an affiliates program. So I'm here to have any of those discussions with you as well, and just thank you all for coming. Beatrice, or the next video picture over from me, so I'll hand it to you.
Thank you, Sari. Thank you for all you did to put this together, and thank you to URI for agreeing to take on this issue. It's an important issue. I think that it's really incumbent on every one of us to speak out on trafficking, and it doesn't have to be a heavy lift. If you go and use the resources that you'll receive in connection with this webinar, you'll find that there's some easy things to do and that the more people you speak with, the more public awareness will build, the more the groundswell of response will be created, and will really be able to make change. You are empowered to make change, but you have to take some kind of action. So do whatever is comfortable for you. It's available, and your passion will result in change.
All right.
Oh, you know what? Elisa's on the phone. I can't see her picture, so I'm forgetting she's here. Elisa, will you say something quickly before Gail goes?
Sure. What I wanted to share, first of all, thank you everyone who's on this, participated in this webinar, who has put it together. I am so honored to be part of this, and I wanted to share some really amazing news. As a result of the of URI's online webinar announcement, a former client that I met over 5 years ago, and I had only seen her the one time. I hadn't seen her since. I hadn't heard from her in over 5 years. But because of this webinar being announced, she reconnected with me today and let me know that, you know, she's safe, and wanted to thank me for helping her find her freedom. So I think that is icing on the cake for me. This is why I work so hard, you know, and I'm so honored to be part of the panelists. You know, I'm probably the oldest one on the panel, but I want to be just like you guys when I grow up. And thank you to everybody who is paying attention, and to all of you who are going to take this information and share it so that you can make a difference too. Thank you.
Okay, well, I think this has been tremendously valuable. Everyone, I want to just echo everyone's gratitude to URI, to Sari. I feel very hopeful. I'm happy I've met Reverend Troy and strengthened my friendship with Beatrice. This is really so hopeful, is that we can work together, and by working together we can end the scourge of trafficking.